the boat that kept coming back. There's a small coastal town on the edge of a northern sea called Hollis Point. It's the kind of place that's not on most maps anymore. A handful of shacks, one long pier, and an ocean that always looks black no matter the season. This story happened to a fisherman named Glenn Porter back in 2009. He'd lived in Hollis Point his whole life and made his living on the water. Every morning at dawn, he'd take his old wooden boat out past the cliffs and return before sunset. It was quiet work, and he liked it that way. But that changed one October morning. Glenn left the harbor like usual, but around midday, the weather turned. The fog rolled in so thick he could barely see his own hands. He said it was like being inside a cloud. Nothing but pale gray, no horizon, no sun, no sound but the waves hitting the hull. He tried to navigate back using his compass, but the needle wouldn't stop spinning. He said it was like something magnetic was pulling at it. He waited for hours, trying to let the fog pass. But when it didn't, he decided to just follow what he thought was the direction of the coast. He said he heard something out there, a sound that didn't fit, like another engine idling, faint but close. He called out, thinking maybe it was another fisherman, but there was no response. The sound faded, then came back louder, this time right behind him. When he turned, he saw the outline of another small boat drifting through the fog. It was moving toward him with a current, no lights, no engine running. He waited for it to pass, but when it came close enough to see, the paint looked familiar. It was his boat. He swore it was an exact copy. Same scratches, same dent on the bow. But the thing was empty. The seats were soaked, as if it had just come up from underwater. He said the sight made him feel sick. He started his engine and left the area fast, barely making it back to shore by nightfall. But when he pulled up to the dock, there was another boat waiting, identical to his, tied up right next to where he always docked. The local harbor watch confirmed it. 2 identical boats, both registered to the same man. They said maybe it was some kind of mistake, but Glenn didn't believe it. The next morning, the second boat was gone. The rope was still there, cut clean. 3 weeks later, Glenn Porter's boat was found drifting 5 miles offshore. It was empty. The deck was wet. The motor was running, and the nets were torn. His body was never recovered. People in Hollis Point still talk about it. How the fog never leaves that area, and sometimes at night, you could see a single boat out there, moving with no one inside, its light flickering in a mist. The catch that shouldn't exist. This next one came from a listener who worked on a trawler in Alaska during the early 2000s. He asked that his name not be used, but said what happened to him and his crew changed the way he looks at the ocean forever. Their job was to fish deep-sea halibut, sometimes for weeks at a time. He said the ocean out there is different, quieter, emptier, like it's hiding something. On the 7th night of their trip, the radar picked up something strange. A shape moving slowly beneath the surface. Large, too large to be any normal fish. They assumed it was a whale, until it surfaced. He described it as a long, pale mass covered in black spots, smooth like a shark, but without fins. It was motionless, floating just below the surface. They got close enough to see that parts of it were torn open, like something had bitten into it. They lowered their nets, thinking it might be a whale carcass they could report. But when they started to pull it up, the winch began to shake violently. The net went taut, then suddenly slacked. Whatever was down there had ripped through heavy steel mesh like paper. When they pulled the line back up, it wasn't empty. There were chunks of flesh stuck in the net. white, rubbery, almost like human skin. They radioed the Coast Guard, who told them to return to port and file a report. But they never made it back. Halfway home, their lights went out. The generator failed. They said the sea beneath them began to churn. Not waves, not current. Something alive moving under them. They felt the deck rise and fall, like something was pressing upward from beneath the boat. Then came the noise, a deep, guttural moan that vibrated through the hull. It didn't sound like any animal. It sounded human. By morning, the water was calm again. The Coast Guard found them adrift, missing 2 men. The rest of the crew refused to speak about what happened. The official report listed mechanical failure and accidental drowning. But when the trawler was brought to shore, investigators found something strange. On the underside of the hull, there were markings, long, finger-like streaks burned into the metal, like something had held on from below. A year later, the company scrapped that vessel. But fishermen who work near that region of the Alaskan coast still say that sometimes sonar picks up something massive beneath them, and every once in a while, a deep voice echoes through the water like something alive calling from the dark. The town that vanished beneath the waves. This last story was sent in by someone whose father worked as a coastal surveyor. He said when he was a kid, his father told him about a place called Blackridge Bay, a town that no longer exists. It was once a fishing community on the northern coast, but after a massive storm in the 1970s, the town was abandoned. The coast eroded, the harbor collapsed, and the few remaining locals moved inland. But years later, his father was hired to take sonar scans of the seabed near that region. What they found shouldn't have been there. About 2 miles off the coast, buried beneath layers of silt, the sonar showed the outline of structures, rooftops, streets, even what looked like the remains of a church steeple. An entire town beneath the water. When the divers went down to confirm, they found wooden beams, rusted anchors, and small household items scattered across the seafloor. But what disturbed them most were the figures. He said there were human shapes down there, not skeletons, not remains. Shapes, as if people had been preserved where they stood. Their skin pale, almost translucent, their eyes wide open. The divers surfaced in a panic. They refused to go back under. 2 of them quit the job that same day. The survey report was sealed, labeled geological anomaly. But the man's father took one of the sonar prints home. For years, he kept it in his office, a reminder of what he'd seen. On that print, near the center of what used to be the main street, was a small circular mark. When he enlarged the image, it looked like a face, stretched, distorted, but still human. He said it reminded him of something reaching up through the water. A few years later, a storm hit that same stretch of coastline. After it passed, a fisherman reported seeing the ruins of rooftops jutting out above the waves, only to vanish again by morning. The Coast Guard dismissed it as debris, but others believe that during certain tides, the town resurfaces, if only for a few hours, before the sea claims it again. People who live near that part of the coast say the fog there feels different. Thick, heavy, almost like it's watching. And sometimes, if you stand on the cliffs at night, you can see faint lights under the water, as if the town is still there, alive in some way that shouldn't be possible. The locals don't fish there anymore. They say the sea doesn't forget. It only waits. 3 stories, 3 coastlines, 3 warnings, each of them tied to the same thing, the sea. The same endless, hungry, living thing that's been swallowing us for centuries. Most people look at the ocean and see peace, beauty, freedom. But the ones who spend their lives on it know the truth. It's not empty. It never was. The next time you're near the coast and hear something echoing from far out in the fog, a hum, a whisper, or a faint song, just remember, it might not be the wind. And whatever you do, don't call back.